Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I sure appreciate it. I'm delighted to be here, and I know this is a summer day during the week, and I'm grateful that you take the time to be part of this gathering. I want to thank you for the kind introduction. Tim, thank you for being a part of this as well. I wish my spouse, Mary, could be here, but back home in the Twin Cities, we have 2 teenage daughters. Anna is 18, Mara is 15. They both like boys, and one of them drives. And so they need some parental supervision. So Mary was with us last week in Iowa. She'll be back on Wednesday for the duration through the straw poll. And I'm grateful for your time here today. The situation in the country is very serious. As you know, the Dow dropped to over 600 points or so today. It's a reflection of a lot of things that are challenges and problems for the country. The Standard & Poor's downgrade that occurred at the end of last week is another symptom, another indicator of how far off track our nation has become under President Obama's failed and misguided leadership. I think it's time that we downgrade Barack Obama from the presidency of the United States. Are you tired of nearly $4 a gallon gas? Are you tired of crushing levels of unemployment? You're tired of a federal government that's out of control? Yes. If we're going to have a new and better direction for America, we're going to need a new and better president. And we've got some lessons to learn, or at least remind ourselves of, as we go into this next election, and that is what happened last time. And I'm running for President of the United States because, like you, I love this country. I've got the experience and the values and the ideas and the record of results to lead it to a better place. But before I talk to you about that, what can we learn from what happened last time? Well, what happened last time is somebody who gave great speeches came through Iowa and convinced the Democrats in this state to catapult him on his way to the White House. And you saw the results. And one of the things we should learn from that is before we elect somebody President of the United States and put him or her in the Oval Office, they better be ready for the job. I think it's reasonable for our country to expect, and Iowa to expect and demand, that the next President of the United States have run something, have been an executive leader, and accomplished the results that we need for the nation. Because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of the rhetoric. I'm tired of the speeches. Barack Obama's words don't put gasoline in our car. Barack Obama's words and speeches don't pay our mortgage. Barack Obama's words and speeches don't give us a paycheck. All they do is give him an opportunity to spout off more of the things that haven't worked. So it's time to get rid of him. It's time to get a new president in this country and get this country back on track. Now look, he did a number of other things as well besides being ill-prepared for the job. By the way, he was a community organizer. He was a college professor. He was in the United States Senate long enough to have a cup of coffee before it got cold. Then he became president. We wonder why it's not working. But beyond just his lack of experience and lack of readiness for the job, he also had a misguided direction for the country. I mean, his view for America is take things out of the private sector, take things out of families, and bring them into government. Our view of the world is to take things out of government and bring it back into the private sector to get this economy moving again, to get the country moving again. He doesn't have an economic plan. He doesn't have a jobs plan. All he has is a campaign plan. You'll notice you can't find him anywhere on the major challenges facing our nation. Where is Barack Obama's plan for fixing Social Security? Where is Barack Obama's plan, a specific plan for fixing Medicaid or Medicare or reforming it? He doesn't have one. He doesn't have the courage or the leadership to come forward and lead this nation forward on the most pressing financial times and challenges of our country. And I issued a challenge last week to Iowa. I'll issue it here again today. If you can find his plan, specific public plan on how he would fix any of the major programs I just mentioned, I will cook you dinner. Or I'll mow your grass. Now, sir, it's limited to 1 acre. The reason I'm confident I won't have to do that because he doesn't have one. By the way, this is also somebody who broke almost every promise he made to the nation. Here are some of the few highlights I'll give you, or lowlights as they were. He came to Iowa and said our healthcare system's busted. It is busted. But he promised back then, as a candidate, he'd do it with Republicans. He would focus on cost containment. He promised that he would be opposed to the individual mandate when he was a candidate. He was against the individual mandate. And then he went to Washington, D.C. and did just the opposite. jammed down the throats of the nation one of the most partisan, most misguided pieces of legislation in the modern history of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, Obamacare should be repealed in its entirety. And you'll love this one. In March of 2009, a few months after he becomes president, after we saw the economic collapse in its full magnitude, he says to the American people, during my first term as president, I'll cut the budget deficit in half. Now, when President Bush left office, the annual budget deficit was about $500 billion. You know what it is now, the annual budget deficit? About $1.5 trillion. Did he cut it in half? He tripled it. Another broken promise. And then he said back then, you know, the economy's in trouble. And his main solution was the stimulus bill. Remember that? And they said, and President Obama said, if you don't pass the stimulus bill, unemployment could go as high as 8%. 8%. Well, they passed that pork-filled government sustenance bill. Unemployment didn't go to 8%. It went to 10%. And it's still at 9%. So we now have a president who has no clue about how to get this economy moving. He's inept, and he spent the first year and a half of his presidency worrying about this unconstitutional health care bill and then trying to figure out ways to do things like closing down the Guantanamo prison so he could bring suspected terrorists back to the United States soil. Misguided, misfocused, misprioritized, misdirected. So now we got to plot a better way forward. And obviously one of the main things we have to do is get jobs growing again in this country. And look, everybody's going to say they're for growing jobs. But if you listen to the Democrats and you listen to Barack Obama, what you'll hear is they say, we're for jobs, but at the same time, they're against businesses. You can't be pro-job and anti-business. That's like being pro-egg and anti-chicken. That doesn't work. So President Obama and the Democrats have been so discouraging, made life so difficult for this nation's entrepreneurs and people who want to start and grow businesses, that they're effectively suffocating the United States economy. There are 6 million businesses in the United States. About 5.9 million of those 6 million are small and medium-sized businesses. The best thing we can do for our country is to listen to the people who are small and medium-sized business owners and do those things that are going to make it more likely that jobs will grow in this country, not because we want to have just a pro-business agenda. We want to have a pro-jobs agenda, and we want to have a pro-jobs agenda because everything you care about, paying your mortgage, and most of the things you care about, paying your mortgage and gas and the like, involve the need for money. You can't take care of your family without some money. You can't put gas in your car without some money, and mortgage, and down the list. And so we got to have jobs for our people. And what we have now is a president who has no clue. There was a 10-year-old at a gathering like this who came up and explained this better than Barack Obama. He said, Governor, if you keep the taxes low, people will have more money. And if people will have more money, they'll buy more things. And if people buy more things, the businesses will be busier. And if the businesses are busier, they'll hire more people. And if they hire more people, they'll have money. And then they'll buy more things, and so on and so on. We shouldn't have to look to a 10-year-old to understand the economy better than Barack Obama. Now, we have a number of other things we got to do, but let me just tell you, I gave the most specific, most concrete, most pro-job, pro-investment plan of any candidate in this race by far. I gave it at the University of Chicago a month or so ago. It's all on the website if you want to read the whole thing, but the Reader's Digest version is this. Take the business tax rate from 35% down to 15%, and make it from one of the worst in the world to one of the best in the world. In exchange for that, clean out all the special deals, deductions, credits, deductions, and the like in the corporate tax code, or at least as many of them as possible, so we have a flatter, fair, more open business tax code in this country. And then companies will have a lighter load, but they'll also be forced to compete based on their ability to get customers, as opposed to getting special deals from members of Congress. Then take the individual tax code and take it from 6 rates down to 2. Have a pro-American energy policy where we're bringing price down for our energy by bringing more American supply of energy online. That means drilling in Anwar, taking advantage of the huge natural gas opportunity we now have in the United States of America, using our coal supply in this country, advancing nuclear energy, doing more offshore drilling, and all it's going to take to make our energy price lower and stable by increasing supply. And we've got to have a regulatory climate in this country that's pro-job and pro-investment and pro-economic growth. And what you have now under the Obama administration is an approach that's pro-economic suffocation. And that's what's going on. And then lastly, on the spending issue, obviously there's a lot under the hood here. But they're doing things that are so bad that if it was taking place in the private sector, they'd be indicted. So they're running a Ponzi scheme of a historic order. And let's just call it like it is. Both parties, for a long time, both in Congress and the White House, have contributed to the problem. It's been growing for a long time. But Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid made it exponentially worse. They really put the pedal to the metal in terms of taking the car over the cliff. So we have a government now at the federal level that spends $40,000 a second they don't have. That's $144 million they'll spend in the hour or so that you're here that they don't have. 40 cents of every dollar that goes out the door or so in Washington is money they don't have. It is an absolute travesty. They take in about $2.2 trillion in revenues, and they send out the door about $3.7 trillion in revenues. If you ran your business like that or your family like that, you wouldn't be around very long in terms of your economic viability. We can't let them do it anymore. Just because we followed Greece into democracy doesn't mean we follow them into bankruptcy. And we got to stand up and take this country back. Every Republican candidate's going to say many of the same things, or many of them are going to say many of the same things. They're going to stand before you or a group like this. They're going to say, hey, look, I'm the one who will reduce spending. They'll say, I'm the one who will cut taxes. They'll say, I'm the one who will do health care reform the right way. They'll say, I'm the one who will appoint conservative justices. They'll say, I'm the one who's pro-life. I'm the one who's for traditional marriage. I'm the one who will reform public employee pension programs and the like. And on down the list. But one thing I hope you'll ask is you'll listen to that and you'll say, my goodness, these candidates all sound similar. What's the difference? You know, what should I look for in terms of my vote? Well, I hope you'll ask some additional questions. One of which, has they actually done any of them? Because there's a big difference between giving a speech. Any bobblehead can stand up here and give you the words of the Republican checklist. That doesn't take any particular talent. The question is, have you actually done it? And you go to Minnesota and look at my record, what you'll see is a record of taking spending from historic highs to historic lows. You'll see that we cut taxes net $800 million over 8 years, even though we had the effects of 2 recessions. You'll see that we took the courts in Minnesota, the Minnesota Supreme Court, for the first time in the modern history of the state, we now have a majority of conservative justices on that court. We did health care reform the right way, no individual mandates, no government takeovers. I took on public employee pension reform and compensation reform before it was the cool and popular thing to do. We advanced the pro-life movement in Minnesota and the pro-life cause in historic ways. I was the co-author of the Defense of Marriage Act. We did immigration reform, welfare reform. I did it all, but I did it in Minnesota. And the significance of that is this isn't rubber stamping the work of a conservative place. This is hard-fought victories under difficult circumstances. And so we had a government shutdown, the first in 150 years. I set a record for vetoes. I used executive power and took more money out of the budget than all the other governors combined. That's the kind of fortitude and strength that we're going to need as the president to get this country back on track. And then they're all going to say, look, I'm the one who can go win in those swing states, those purplish states, places like Iowa and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Ohio and Pennsylvania and more. Well, I actually did it. I got elected and re-elected as a conservative in one of the most challenging political environments in the country. So I want to take your questions, but as you think about what we've talked about today and you look at this economy, I know it can be very discouraging. But discouragement is not the American way. If we went around this room and asked you to tell your American story, what you learned and what you valued, I think we'd hear some incredible stories about your family. I think we'd hear some incredible stories about your faith. I think we'd hear some incredible stories about your job or your place of work or a business that you started and the economic opportunity that you had, what that's meant to you. I think we'd hear some incredible stories about your church and charities. But I don't think we'd hear many stories about a government bureaucracy and how government came into your life and transformed your way in some powerful and positive force. The point of that story and the point of it is that our country is not the greatest country in the world because of our government. It's not in our bureaucracy. The brilliance, the majesty of this country is not in our bureaucracy, it's in our people. It's different in our country because we're free. That's not a throwaway line by a politician. When people are free, they're free to speak and worship and invent and innovate and create and associate as they see fit. And when government so weighs that down, makes it so expensive, so slows it down, makes it so difficult, or worse yet, takes it over and takes it into government, they not only grow their budgets, they not only grow their footprint, they do something else that's even more corrosive. That is, they begin to destroy and discourage the American spirit. I didn't grow up in a country of people who were discouraged. We need to make sure that we have a can-do attitude, an optimistic attitude. We have always overcome the challenges in this country, and we will again. Not because of the bureaucracy, not because of Barack Obama's central planning, but because the American people understand what works at the core. Individual responsibility, accountability, freedom and free markets, making sure that we recognize and respect and acknowledge God in our country. We were founded under God in this nation. Those are the kinds of things and more that made the country great. They'll make it again. It is not about government spending. It is not about bureaucracy. It's about the power and brilliance of freedom and what that unleashes in individuals. That's the secret of this country. So let's go do it. We know what needs to get done. I can't do it alone. I need you to join our cause. So I hope you'll come to Ames and vote for us in that straw poll this Saturday. Thank you for listening. I'll be happy to take your questions.